Connect podcast. I'm your host Ali. Super excited to have you guys today. I have an amazing guest today because, one thing I promised you guys that we're gonna make legal simple for you, right? We're gonna demystify this myth of connecting with a lawyer and how do you seek legal help out there, right? So today I have an amazing guest, Bani, on the show. Welcome to the show, Bani.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good, really good. It's really hot in Ontario today.
It is in Ontario, and again, not an endorsement and selling Alberta, but one should consider Alberta, right? So, Bunny, welcome to the show, and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, about your background, and what areas of law do you practice.
Sure. Hi guys, my name is Bani Duggal. I practice immigration law, wills and estate law, and civil litigation. And I articled in construction litigation, so I have a bit of experience in that as well. I'm a fairly new lawyer, it's just my second year of practice. But with that said, I have lots of experience. I was in Edmonton before, so I'm licensed in Alberta as well as Ontario. Uh, and basically, these are my three areas of practice.
That's awesome. So, Bunny, let's deep, right dive into it. Wills and state, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have no idea that you do need a will in Canada. So first, talk about why do you need a will in Canada, and if someone needs it, what is generally the process around?
So I think you do need a will in Canada. And I mean, it's not just about Canada, it's about protecting your assets. A will is basically a vehicle to transfer assets to your children or whosoever you want to give them. And it's a tool which is used after death. A lot of people don't understand that it's required, and they think it's a waste of money or they think it's a waste of time. Especially people from, I feel, the South Asian community just feel like, oh, after the death, my son knows where everything is lying or my daughter knows where everything is lying. It's not a big deal. But they need to understand that until your assets are not protected or until there's no name on them, there's a possibility that if it's not meant for somebody, it can be taken away by the government or the banks. And I'm not really sure about other jurisdictions like back in different countries, like in India, Pakistan, China, or Russia, or any of these countries. But I know in Canada, if you don't claim certain assets left by your parents, it could create problems for you, and you probably might not get it. Coming to your second question, how difficult or how easy it is to create a will. It's not very difficult. I think you need to just find proper representation, and you need to make sure that you have a list of all your assets or all the things you own. Like, we sometimes have clients who come up with different corporations. They have to give away different assets. Even, as a matter of fact, their baseball card collection is named to people on wills. So it can be the most extreme versus the most basic. But I personally feel that people should have awareness on the fact that a will is very necessary, especially after COVID, because in the pandemic, people of almost any age faced different, saw a different side of the world. And I don't want to say it because wills and estates can sometimes get very depressing, in terms of the fact that we have people calling us every day telling us, my mother passed away or my brother passed away or something like that. But it's just a way to safeguard whatever you have. I mean, everybody earns a life, a whole lifetime, and you don't want to give it just to the government or to a charity. You probably want to give it to your kids. We have people coming and giving it to their adoptive children, to their cousins, to their sisters, to their brothers. So it's honestly upon you and what you want. That's why it's called the will. So easy, it's very easy. You need to get good legal representation. I would suggest get representation which you're comfortable with, who understands you. We have a lot of clients who are Italian, so we have like lawyers speaking in Italian. They contact them. We have a lot of lawyers who are Indian. So I personally feel you should go to somebody who understands your culture, that really helps because then they can offer you better advice in terms of how to get your will in a streamline.
And what if someone has foreign assets, right? Does Canadian will overlaps in it, or how does that work?
Well, I'm not really sure about Ontario, but like when we talk about wills and powers of attorneys in this matter, like a will is basically a tool which is used after your death, but a power of attorney is used while you're probably incapacitated or medically unwell. And with Ontario, I know that they do take other certain jurisdictions and they take them into consideration, and you can go to the court and probably take that in consideration. But I feel that people who have assets in different jurisdictions, they should get wills and powers of attorneys in those jurisdictions as well, because sometimes what happens is that even if you do mention a lot of things in your Canadian wills, those wills, if you take them, for example, you're in London or you're in South Africa and you take them there, they might not be able to take them or accept them. So I personally suggest you should have, if you have assets in different countries, you should have different wills. Like we deal with a lot of clients from the US. And there's a lot of states in the US which are okay with Canadian wills and powers of attorneys. But there's a lot of states, because each state has a different way of functioning. There's a lot of states which don't. So what we suggest to our clients is that you need to get a will in place in that place as well. And I think we have in the past spoken to, our team has spoken to different attorneys in different countries when it comes to people passing in estates. When people have, like, for example, the other day I had somebody, their property was in London. So the mother passed away and they wanted to sell the property in London. So we were speaking to those people over there in UK.
Mm.
So it totally depends on that. But definitely if you have assets back home or back in any other country, like even vacation homes, yes, you can mention them in your Canadian will, but it's better to have a will in that place as well.
In the places as well, right? And that's why you have a lawyer, right? Okay, to make sure the due
Yes.
diligence is done, because like any small mistake can definitely cost in. And as you mentioned, sometimes like it's as simple as not even mentioning someone on the asset can result into that mistake, right?
Yep.
How does I heard that? So how does that make things complex? Let's say if someone has a special needs kid, or so I've heard that it changes certain parameters to certain things. Chat a little bit about it.
So if somebody does have a child or a sibling who they want to give their inheritance to, and they are disabled or they have special needs, um, basically a trust is put into place. So a trust is a method. Like I said, a will is a vehicle which transfers your assets to whosoever you're willing to give this assets to. With the When it comes to special needs people, they get certain grants from the government which are ongoing, like until probably they die. So when they receive a huge chunk of inheritance, sometimes what happens is the government sees that, okay, we're probably not going to give this person those benefits because they have a huge chunk of
Mm,
inheritance, just to safeguard, your child or your person's future who is going through some problem. You would want to create a trust. And again, I think every situation is different. And you should always go to a different lawyer to create, because there are always different types of trusts. So you
mm.
never know which one's going to be suitable for you.
That's an excellent point, and I think it's a creation that in I know that they need it, but I had no idea that that it can impact the benefits they're getting from the government, right? Which can
Yep.
have a major impact on someone's day-to-day expenses. So Bani, we're just going to shift the gears and kind of move towards a very different area, right?
Okay.
Immigration, right? And
Yes.
now Canada is on this amazing goal. I was aggressive goal to get the population to, and there is a lot of announcement. There's constant updates in the program. So first off, right, if someone is just looking to come to, uh, how should they even start the process? And I will add that in this day and age when there's so much fraud and there is so much um, misinformation and disinformation exists, especially in immigration, um, how one can overcome these things, uh, because we know that like people have been have been taken advantage by the fraudsters. So,
Yeah, well, I think it's all over the place that people are getting scammed in immigration, and I personally feel that the basic thing people should do is Google, you know, a proper agent or a lawyer, because I think what happens is people just go by, oh, my sister's brother's friend went to this ABC person and they got a visa. Why don't you go there too? Well, they do end up going there, but it what happens is that you don't even know if that person's registered or they're approved by the IRCC. And people don't ask. And it's not even about what people don't ask. The agents are ready to scam you. They don't tell you. So I personally had this experience. I was in India for approximately 6 months after I got married. And I was on this fishing thing where I was going to different agents and checking out what's going on. And before this scam even happened, I was actually on this expedition on actually seeing how much it's really funny because you go to them and they paint you a nice picture. They're like, I was told, I didn't tell them I'm Canadian. I didn't tell them anything. I didn't tell them. I said I want to go to Canada. Oh, they said you have three options. Why don't you become a student? You pay us this much XYZ money and you become a student. And I said, okay, what courses? Because I want to see courses. They're like, that doesn't matter. You have to go to Canada. And I was looking at my husband and I was just like trying not to laugh because I'm just like, what's happening? And then they're like, oh, if you don't want to do that, you don't have that money. Why don't you just get a tourist visa and then you can convert it into work permit? And I said, oh, that's possible. They're like, yeah, everything is possible. Why don't you just pay us a good amount of $10,000? And I'm just like, wow. So they actually paint you a dream. They're not willing to give you enough information. I think the first red flag for people is who go to such agents is everything is not going to be a dream. You're going to have to struggle. And second of all is that if somebody's telling you that it's that easy, that's the biggest red flag. Okay? That's the biggest red flag if they're promising you something which you don't know is going to happen. Okay? And there might be some agents, in all across the world which are legit and they're probably trying to make a living for themselves, but because of these scammers and all these other people's, I'm not saying for immigration there's always just lawyers. Like a lot of my practice deals with appeals and judicial reviews, so I mean filing is definitely an aspect, but not always, right? But why we get these judicial reviews and appeals is because some agent messed up somebody's case. They don't even know, they don't have passwords for their accounts. They don't even know what email that agent has fraud. They just do fraud. So the first thing would be is please Google it. Please see online reviews. Please try and try, because sometimes I know people don't even have access to this much and they still are willing to come to this country. But please try and get as much as information you can, and probably a certificate of registration of that person, or I would suggest, yes, go to lawyers, but some people can't even afford that. So it's become a fish market. Like immigration, like when you talk about a state law, it's very clean. But when you talk about immigration, it's a fish market. Like people call us every day. They'll be like, oh, can you do our visitor? We'll be like, okay, we take this much. They'll be like, oh, sorry, we can't come to you because somebody sitting in some, place of the world is going to do it for $200. So I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy. It's like
Debatable.
it's a pure wild west going on there. And I think three things you mentioned, and I think I'm just going to iterate it for our audience. Number one thing is what Bani said, that make sure you work with a registered agent or a consultant or a lawyer, right? That's a no-brainer. That shouldn't be a compromise there. Number one thing. Number two thing, I think what Bani you said is not painting the right picture, right? There's a struggle, there's challenges when you come here, and it's not for everyone. right? When you sometimes people hear struggles and challenges, and people are like, oh, really, I have to reestablish myself in a new country. That's when they realize it, that, what, maybe where I am, it's actually can be a better option. Third thing is like, what you mentioned is, it's also very important, is like, reason that you have the right lawyer and agent is because then you don't go into the refusals and appeals and like, denials, or even getting barred, right? um, because I heard that, like, Immigration Canada has implemented AI, and like, it's catching people out right and center because they're not giving the right information. So I think having the lawyer, or the certified agent do that proper due diligence is very, very important, because I think in immigration, that one decision can change their life. So it does have major implications on their life.
Yep.
Right. So like, so Bani, talking about the new programs, let's simplify it for some people, that like, express entry versus PNP. Like, what are the journal streams of immigration? And if you can give, like, kind of this 10,000 square feet overview, although like I assume Canada has what, like over 100 streams like now, or 100 different
Yeah, they
pathways, right?
have a lot. Yeah, they have a lot. I mean, PNP, the difference between Express Entry and PNP is Express Entry basically gets you easily through anywhere in the country. And I think PNP is provincial nomination program. So with PNP, what happens is that I have a lot of, recently we've had a lot of clients call in and said, you know what, we want to do PNP. Why? Because a lot of provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they don't have a lot of people like in terms of population. So what happens is, like, for example, Saskatchewan needs probably doctors, or they need lawyers, or they need a certain segment of people, which are, they want them to come there, they want them to work, they want the economy of the province to grow as well. So what a provincial nomination program does is that, for example, if you're in a certain stream, they help you go to that province. But PNP has its certain restrictions because it's provincial, and express entry doesn't have those restrictions. You can go anywhere. Like, some people, mostly what I see is most of my clients, because wherever they have family, they tend to go there just so they don't feel lonely. So most of the people, unless or until it's really necessary and they don't have enough points, they go for provincial nomination. But most of them do tend to go out with other programs and want to reunite with, some sort of family member or friend or cousin, because it's kind of difficult when you do come here, because it takes time to settle in. But definitely, like, with time, there are so many new segments opening up. There's so many new things. And please, what I would say is, don't get fooled with Instagram and TikTok. If somebody is telling you some stream, please Google it. Please call a lawyer's office and make sure that exists. Because again, I've had so many calls being like, "Oh, we saw this on TikTok. Is it true?" So, just if you actually go on canada.ca and you see the immigration side, the segment of that website, everything is there. Like, you don't even have to. I mean, what I see in most of the clients we get is that they don't want to do anything. They just want to pawn it off to an agent or a client. And that's where the problem lies. Like, with this ongoing problem of deportation of so many students, I feel that's the problem, is where people just pawn it off, and they think that, okay, we're paying you money, you do everything. You need to do your due diligence of different streams. There are probably 1,000 different streams out there, which even I probably have not dealt with, but you need to research that. And like, every 3 months, there's something coming up, like with this, whoever expected that with the PR and the spousal applications you're going to get easy visitor visas, right? But that happened a month ago, or I think a month and a half ago. So I mean, things keep evolving and things keep changing. But yes, of the person who's applying, please be aware of what you're doing.
That's an excellent point, right? Like as Bani said, right? Like, and I love how, like, Bani's not saying come to her. Bani's saying go and Google it, right? And that's amazing, because I think a lot of people don't do their due diligence, and And correct me if I'm wrong, Bani, that recently with the decision with the Indian students getting deported to, the court said that the onus lies on the applicant, right? Onus, the end of the day, responsibility lies on the candidate, not on the agent or on the. Correct me if I'm wrong. If that's something that court said, right? Or something
Um,
along these
I
lines.
I think you're right. I think it was that. I'm not too sure. I didn't really read, but I think I was having a discussion with one of my colleagues the other day, and he said the same. He said something very similar. So I think it was that, and I think now what they're doing is they're assessing each case by its own. But I think that's right, but at the same time, who's going to go up to the court and say like, "Oh, I did something wrong," or "I went to a scammer," or "I pawned it off"? Everybody's going to be like, "I didn't know anything," or So it's, I mean, it's kind of, it's nice when we're talking about human rights, but it's really wrong when we're talking about, what I mean? There's a really thin line because it's wrong. It sets such a wrong precedent. And as being from India myself, it sets such a wrong precedent because people come up to us and they're like, there's a lot of people who come up to us who are colleagues and different lawyers, and they'll be like, yeah, because Indians are scammers. Well, it's not like that. There's probably so many people sitting out there who are scammers, but now we're identified as such because some person in some part of India wanted to scam students for money. And I'm not even kidding. The amount of money that guy must have, he's a millionaire now, whoever scammed the people. But yes, the students should, again, awareness. They had no awareness. Somebody's friend probably went there, or somebody's sister probably went there and got it done, so they got it done. And it's crazy how people are selling their assets in different parts of the world just to come to Canada, whereas we don't have jobs in Canada, we don't have infrastructure in Canada. But it's amazing how they're taking the situation. They're taking it case by case. It's very nice. It sounds very nice on humanitarian grounds, but when it comes to IRCC, it's really sad for us, for people like us who are actually sitting in the practice, and for agents as well, that this can happen, anything can happen. I mean, I think you're understanding what I'm trying to say, that they're just setting a wrong, they're not setting boundaries, they're not setting
Yes.
certain boundaries like a yes or a no or a maybe. It's just like, I'm sorry, but if people were scammed and they had wrong documents,
Mhm.
what was the government doing then when those people were entering the country?
Well,
What were the officers doing then when they were stamping them and being like, go, like, welcome to Canada?
and I think it's
So
also correct me if I'm wrong, Bani, when someone reads in the news that well, students were caught, but they were let go. And then someone prospect out there is thinking, you know what, I can also play the system because I will be let go, let gone too. So it just sets a very bad precedent, for
it
people.
does.
And how in this market, when it's a fish market, it's what you tell to one person and what makes it to the 20th person is a completely different. um, I think on Logic, someone told us that there was a H1B visa update, and someone said, "Oh, we heard that you can just come to Canada with H1B visa," and but someone saw the TikTok video, they were like, "Oh, it just come here," and I think that's a misinformation and disinformation, and that's where I think the lawyers like you and the certified consultants um, are in fact way more important in this ecosystem, I think, right?
Yep.
Because technically they will be the ones who will protect it, right? End of the day, there's a huge stake in it to protect it, because any wrong person comes in, takes a space from the deserving person who should have been to Canada.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
uh, thank
No,
you. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Santha.
No,
Thank
please
you.
go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, no, I was just saying that, you actually made a point, and that sounds, and you summarized it quite well. So it makes sense, but that the deserving people should get it more than
Should get it. Yeah.
just random people.
And it's also this this, I would say the people who are going through a regular process is also disfranchises them, because someone is following the right path and someone just gaming the system, but they're still waiting in the line, and the gaming the system is bypassing the line. So I think that's an excellent point, because there has to be more unified system, and I think I hope that with AI and with some other tools, technology, that this fraud and this things will be reduced significantly. So,
Yeah.
so Bani, if people want to get in touch with you, how they can do that?
Well, I have my own blog as well. And also, Salman's probably going to link me somewhere in this video. So, no, I think Lawtique is an amazing situation. I was saying it's an amazing website. And I think it's a really good initiative by you. I'm sure you're going to link me somewhere so people can contact me. But I do have my own blog and I do help international students. I just help them. I answer their questions every Friday, and try to, give them as much information as I can about coming to Canada, or, doing that. I do that. I have a blog on YouTube and Instagram. So yeah, you guys can search
Are
me
you,
up again. Google me.
and are you doing it for the law students, or are you doing it for overall journal students?
So, Salman, I started off by just helping law students because when I started my NCA program, so with me, the story was different. I was from Canada. I went back to India. But when I came back to Canada, I had no idea of how to bridge my law degree.
Yes.
So I was completely lost in the dark, and some random person helped me out. And I'm still very thankful to that random person because I became a lawyer because of that person. So I started this blog just out of hobby, just to help people and students. Some students are lost. They don't know if they should come to Canada. They don't know if they want to put in those 2-3 years of NCAs. So I
Yes.
just answer their questions online. And with that, I have a really nice small community of just law students, mostly law students. Yes, if anybody else texts me or anything, I do respond to messages because it is just easier than getting on a call. I respond to messages and they're quicker. So I do have a few content on on
Yes.
Instagram and YouTube, and I just like helping out people. But definitely just Google me and you'll find me.
Awesome. Hey, Google. Like, I think Bani's
Yeah,
favorite word is Google it, right? Uh, don't ask me, Google it. I think it's an
exactly.
excellent thing, and you don't find many lawyers creating content. So whenever I find a lawyer who's creating content, kudos to them, because it does take out of their personality to come on the camera and talk about and especially helping someone through the process you have already been through it. I think that's an amazing initiative by
Thank
itself.
you.
So Bani, thank you so much, guys. If you need to get in touch with Bani, I'll say go and Google it. But if you don't want to Google it, I will make sure in the show notes, wherever you're watching podcast, YouTube, or TikTok, wherever you guys are watching it, I will make sure that Bani's information is there. And if you are a law student in a foreign country or interested in NCA, I'm sure anyone who is a law student, they know about NCA, they know what it stands for. If you are, then check out Bani's YouTube and her other channel. Again, you have to Google it for that as well. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Thank you so much, Bani, for joining us today.
Okay, bye. Thank